It looks like, though, we are right about to get underway. Both teams are putting in their keystone. On our main stream here, we have BDGG, and in the bottom left corner, you can see the boys getting started as well. Slight delay in when they've started the run, but don't worry, we will normalize that if it's close at the end. And we are here underway with BDGG pulling this very first pull.
Yeah, it's going to be. They can see they're opting for the rocket barrage to take care of all of these ad strat instead of going for the hammer, which is really nice. They've done that with absolute finesse instead of opting to go under the hammer, which both strategies are viable, but that was just clean.
Yeah, I think the rocket barrage has a little bit more upside. If you do that faster, like it can be done faster, but it is, I think, a little riskier as well. A little bit harder to do the same way every time. You can see now they're kind of prepping these hammers, and they go in at certain times to coordinate when the hammer slams with when the bosses are going to be active, and that's going to be a really good way for them to just do huge chunks of these bosses' health with these different hammers. And yeah, you can just see they are melting. Wow.
Absolutely. I mean, if you guys in chat don't know, the hammer scales damage-wise on how many people trigger it off, so they'll be stacking in as a group and then moving out from under it afterwards to allow that hit. Tanks are trying to remove the 2 plates off the Platinum Pummeler, and then they'll bring it sort of to that last hammer where they'll take the last plating off and hopefully kill No Mercy for You sort of around the same time, but wanting to make sure that they're just keeping consistent uptime on No Mercy for You under that hammer. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if it's on one of the hunters just popping an immunity and then just staying there through flame jets just so they can keep that hammer damage going on No Mercy for You.
Yeah, I think they're going to be able to get it here even before that second flame jet gets cast, which is a really good sign. This is, of course, a tyrannical key and a tyrannical plus 20 at that, so the damage from the flame jets does not mess around. They were able to get through with only one cast of that, so they had a lot of cooldowns for it. And now you can see maneuvering over towards that last hammer. They're going to get that, slammed down and really well executed as the boss is just about dying. Really quick kill from them. Meanwhile, down on the side of the boys, you can see they're a little bit slower on the boss. They did start their dungeon slightly later, but even factoring that in now, they're still slightly behind here. Yeah, you can see still 40% health on the Platinum Pummeler. They're taking this a little bit slower. They are going to take off most of the rest of its health with this hammer smash if they got everybody in it. Yeah, that's going to be maybe 30 seconds in favor of BDGG here at the start.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what BDGG here do as well. Here comes this pull I was talking about on whether or not they take all of the slimes into Cujo and use a box either for line of sight. It doesn't look like they're doing that, though. They're maybe just going to use immunities and use the pillars.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways that you can do this first area. For instance, the boys here have access to that rogue, so they were able to shroud past those first 2 waste processing units, and they're able to just move in to the last bit here. Meanwhile, BDGG didn't have access to that, so they had to come up with something slightly different. But what BDGG has is they have the Fire Mage, and so they're able to just combust onto Cujo, and as long as all the ads are right next to Cujo, that's going to be really easy for everything to die from the Ignite. So you can really see how the different composition choices here inform the different pulls that the teams have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just going to be about tank positioning and finesse now on Cujo. They'll just be looking to make sure that they have just that min-max uptime, making sure they've got as much uptime on Cujo as they can with the box movements when the flame jets come out. That way they're able to just keep that consistent DPS on Cujo, making sure they're in a safe spot on the box and just keeping that uptime on the boss. This is such a short dungeon. The min-max side of that really does come into play.
Yeah, you can actually hit Cujo while you're still hiding behind the box if you can get both the boss and yourself positioned perfectly. And that is a really great thing to take advantage of to do just that tiny little bit more damage. You can see a good, I think that was a feigned death coming out on the Cujo leap there. If you feign death or vanish while he's leaping at you, he will stop and not keep leaping at everybody else. Won't do any damage. Really good way to keep it so your healer, especially if they're that Holy Paladin, are able to just keep blasting damage instead of having to spend any globals on healing. Meanwhile, we hop back over to BDGG's perspective here, and you can see that they are a solid 70% of the boss's health, I'd say, ahead here. Look at that damage meter as well. You can just see Chow has ascended off of, I think, mostly the strength of the initial combustion with all the AoE, but still, that is going to melt the boss, and they are done with Cujo. Just 4 minutes and 44 seconds into this dungeon, they've already killed the second boss here. And 40% trash as well. That is wild.
Yeah, just really, really clean. And now comes the ultimate test of getting up the conveyor belt. And you can see Trell just a little bit stuck there trying to jump up. It's claimed so many lives, the conveyor belt. So they get a clean transition up here. They're going to speed pipe. They're going to probably pull all the citizens in with this, I would assume, just for Trell on the Hunter there for just as much funnel as he can get, getting those rapid reload resets on Aspect, and just absolutely pumping the damage here. This is where BM's really going to come into its own while Fire Mage, while Chow's waiting on his combust to come back up, which will most likely see put out again on the 3 bots coming up. But again, it's a tyrannical setting, so I don't think they're going to have too many issues with the arcing zaps and the large AoE when it goes off.
Yeah, one thing you have to watch out for here is, in addition to Tyrannical, we do have Skittish active, and Skittish plus Fire Mage is often, the math equation there often ends up with a dead Fire Mage if you're not careful. So they need to watch out on the threat side. Here we will see Chow. There's that combustion coming out. So it's on Cry to make sure that Chow does not get too much aggro here. These mobs are going to just melt if that combustion can be allowed to take a little bit. Oh, but you can see Chow actually gets meleeed. Yeah, there it is. Unfortunately, though, Chow is able to do much more damage to those bots than they are to him. They are all gone. Great work by BDGG, managing those affixes there onto the Blastatron now. And we are pretty rapidly approaching the final part of this dungeon. Ooh,
they're really moving quick. And you can see here, Cry's actually moved the spider over to the side, and this will mean Chow can just stand there and pretty much pew his little heart out without having to actually move for this capacitor discharge. So, it's a really nice way that you can get around your casters having to move here. Hunters can obviously stay in being so mobile, but, just a nice big brain strat to drag that over so Chow can get some decent damage into this outside his combustion window.
Yeah, mages really prefer not having to move all the time. They can do it, especially if they only have to move a little bit, but having to dodge the entire capacitor discharge tends to be a DPS loss, so it's understandable that they want to avoid that. All right, here we go. We are in now to Nihilotha. We've got the obelisk activated, and probably we're going to see a snap coming out. Yeah, you can see Cry on a little box there.
There we go.
That is going to be Void Weaver Mouth there, snapped over. So they're going to kill this. This is going to be the one awakened mob they will kill, and they will fight the other 3 with the last boss. Now, between these 2 team compositions, BDGG is going to have a much easier time fighting awakened enemies with the last boss because they have that Fire Mage, and Fire Mages really specialize at that kind of awakened on pull of the last boss moment. Whereas the boys are going to have a little bit of a harder time dealing with that, but it is by no means impossible for them either. Just something that it'll be alive for a little while longer, so they'll need to be playing around those abilities for longer into the fight.
I'm assuming we're going to see them drag this trash in to Sparkflux as well, which is going to be interesting as well, because even though this trash, it's a tyrannical setting, this boss, when you get double ups with cogs, flame cannons, and things like that, can get fairly spicy. So they'll be trying to get this. You can see a plant spawn now, so they're getting over that to get a stun on the plant. And they're absolutely, Trell's just melting this trash at the moment with all those resets. So here comes flame cannons and just rotating around. You want to get this trash down early on in the fight. The reason being is the longer it drags on, especially on a tyrannical setting, you've got plants, you've got cogs, you've got flame cannons, you've got discombobulators to watch out for. It's the Super Bowl of don't stand in the bad stuff, pretty much.
Yeah, Trell playing that Hunter does have a little bit of an easier time dodging everything than, for instance, Chow does on the Mage, but it's still a challenge, even on a spec as mobile as BM Hunter. There's just so much stuff on the ground, and especially on this tyrannical affix, when you get later into the fight, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes into this fight, the entire ground is just covered with stuff you can't stand in, and that is when it can start to get really challenging. On this plus 20 level, we should see the boss die before there's too much of the area denied, but it's still a challenge, and they will still die if they get hit by 2 effects pretty much of anything in quick succession here. So even at this key level that's maybe a little bit lower than like the super high pushing that some of these players on this team actually do, it is still a very deadly boss fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though we've seen, from 26 to 30s now in regards to key range, things will still kill you. It's not the fact that these guys have done higher keys and it's just a 20, mistakes in here will still kill you. There's sort of no questions about it. So these guys still having to play super clean, super well with their interrupts, and just still be on top of everything, as it's not just a free ride in regards to skipping down in difficulty for them. They still have to play well. They still have to bring it.
Trell forced to use his turtle there as he got an unfortunate positioning. It was forced by the laser beams into a part of the room that he really did not want to be in. That's not going to be a problem for them, though. They are able to take down Machinist's Garden. Looking down at the side of the boys also doing really well on this boss fight. I think they've caught up largely in time here.
Boys
the question is if they pulled the same amount of trash. Yeah, I wasn't able to see if they have pulled that trash pack into the boss the same way that BDGG did. So it looks like they have. Yeah, so the boys are neck and neck here with BDGG. They've caught almost all the way back up, and BDGG just have this maybe half the trash bowl lead now.
These two mobs, I mean, they've played them really clean, BDGG, but they have to be the worst two mobs to be pulled on top of each other for range. You try and see where their butts are facing, and you just cannot see which way the Sonic Pulse is coming out of. So BDGG handled them really cleanly, and now are heading over. And the boys are right on their heels, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. We'll probably see half the bridge pull, and then I'm assuming we'll see a skip on the last top corner, and then we'll see the 3 awakened mobs with the boss. But anything can happen, and it is all going to come down really to this last boss with the 3 obelisks, tight space. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so because of the differences in pathing here, the boys are going to have to pull a little bit more than BDGG is here. BDGG just needs these 3 gnomes, and then they're going to be able to skip to the last boss, whereas the boys are having to fight a robot as well. And those robots, not only are they more dangerous, but they have quite a bit of health that will sponge up some of the boys' time. Let's see how BDGG is now going to skip to the boss. Looks like they are not going to use the obelisk. They are instead going to be using Lightfoot potions on the whole team, and they're going to run through. Cry, it looks like, has some threat there. And maybe they'll all be shadow melding at this point. Yeah, there comes the heroic leap. Everybody's getting into the room. Shadow melds are activated. Have they skipped everything as wanted here? Yes, they have. They've dropped combat with everything, and they're now ready for the last boss here. This is a really hard part. This is where it all comes down to. We're going to see how well Chao can combust and kill these awakened enemies before they kill the rest of his friends. And here we go into the pull.
It's going to be interesting, and this is what I was talking about at the start of the dungeon too. You have no form of mass dispel on Samrek to get rid of this fear, and you've got orbs flying around, you've got Blood of the Corruptor leaving puddles on the ground, you've got a fairly narrow space as well, and generally you see like triple range in here. It's not too bad because there is still 2 range, but spacing is something that you have to be aware of, where usually in a tournament setting you might not, because you have 3 range. But they're making really nice work of this so far. You've still got the Hunter's Pet Taunt for Orgoroth as well, so you're not getting slapped with that. So Cry can kind of get a bit of a respite from that. But they've handled this really well so far. This is clean.
Yeah, wow, Trell got a really tough overlap there of a fear and a recalibrate, but it's not going to be too much of a problem there. Samrek is going to go down before another fear comes out. And look at those damage numbers as well. Chao just has completely annihilated everything here. That's not something that the boys have access to as well. The boys having to figure out a way to do this without access to that Fire Mage, coming into the boss fight a little bit slower than BDGG as well. BDGG here really in position to win this map. All they have to do from this point is not have a wipe, and they should be able to edge out the win here. They have pulled the boss early enough, and given they didn't wipe to those awakened mobs, it is now their game to lose, unless the boys can pull out some insane damage numbers, which they do have the Holy Paladin. That is a pretty big single target damage advantage compared to the Resto Druid that Terrason's playing on the side of BDGG. So maybe it's possible for the boys to close this gap back up with that single target damage, but wow, it's going to be hard.
It's certainly going to be a bit of an uphill battle now. We're going to be on to Omega in his final form soon for BDGG, which is coming up in 7 seconds. The boys are not far behind, though, and they've sort of gotten through those obelisks really clean as well. And I shouldn't imagine there's going to be too many issues with magnetic arm and magnetic grapple for these guys, for the remainder of this fight. But it's still, anything can happen. A spud moment could happen and someone could get knocked off. Like, that's never, ever happened to me before, but it can happen. Bad things can happen.
You can get knocked off this platform? I wouldn't know. I've never seen anything like that happen. So it's good to I'm hearing about these mechanics now for the very first time.
Yeah, I only heard as well. It's never happened to me, as I said, but I have been told on a recalibrate you can get punted off the platform and die and not be able to be B-res. So, anything can happen. You can see magnetic grapple coming out now, but they're having no problems in getting through this damage, staying away from that arm, and they are just chunking through his health as well. Down to 50% to go now for BDGG, just making sure that they're not overlapping with these Giga Zaps. You can see Trell just getting through that with Aspect, no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, the boss here is dying really quickly, actually, for BDGG. This damage on a tyrannical boss fight on a +20, this is still really, really fast for them. They are pumping out a lot of damage here. And as long as they can get through this one last magnetic arm that's going to come out in a second, that'll be all they need. They'll be able to win this game. Yeah, you can see the boss melting now, sub 10%. BDGG going to come out to an early lead in this match. Game 1 going to them. Great job. The boys, though, also coming up with a very, very close time.
Really clean run. 0 death, too. They've BDG putting it down that they did not come to fornicate with spiders. They came here and they mean business. If you're in amongst it, in a large pool, it can be really hard to see which way it's going. And the tank also has to be mindful of the grinders and that skull crack they'll do, because it's never happened to me, but if you're not in melee range as the tank, it will kill one of your DPS. As I said, it's never happened to me, but it can happen, so something to be aware of.
Don't you play Blood Death Knight, Dark Mech? don't those just kill you as well?
Everything kills me. Everything kills me.
Oh, okay, so we're into this first pull here, and yeah, you can see a big unholy setup here coming out from Thalamir, and yeah, just big, massive damage. Gonna melt everything here. Affixes that are going on are Sanguine and Grievous, which means that it's going to be really important for the teams to keep these mobs moving as everything is dying. If something heals up a lot from Sanguine, that's going to slow down their run by a huge amount. And in this area, there are some mobs that don't cooperate with you as much as you'd like. The trash tossers that jump around can often jump into Sanguine, and that can really, really slow things down. I think that's what happened with this one here. However, they were able to get through that reasonably quickly. More than 20% trash just from the first pull. Thalamir going to pop the Lightfoot, go and grab that Shockbot to increase his damage as they move in now to the next pull. One of the nice things about Unholy DKs is that your cooldowns are fairly short. You can see Dark Transformation is already back up. Doesn't have the Unholy Frenzy, but the Dark Transformation alone would be enough for a reasonably sized ramp here if he wanted to fire it off. May instead hold off and wait for the Dark Transformation instead, as they have pulled right into the boss. Whew. This is a blazing fast MDI style start for both teams.
Yeah, this is huge, and you can see too they've elected to just keep all of this trash onto King Gobamak, and they are just going to keep that funnel for the Unholy DK going. It's just Thalamir just going full whap here with some well-applied plague. It's just absolutely crazy. And Sanguine as well, they've managed it really well from the first initial pull to even this onto King Gobamak, being able to drop the Sanguine behind him there. They're only activating one conduit, so they continue to have that funnel coming in for the Unholy DK and the Hunter. Ring of Peace coming out there again to avoid Sanguine. This is a really, really nice opening from BDG here. Really, really nice opening.
Yeah, it has worked out great for them that this map where Trell is playing that warrior is going to be the map where they have Sanguine active, because I think Trell is the most experienced tank that they have on the roster. Chow and Cry have both tanked some extent, and both will be playing Prot Warrior for this team today. But Trell is the one who's tanked MDI keys quite a lot in his past, and so that Sanguine experience of moving the mobs and preventing Sanguine healing, it's a hard skill to see on damage meters, but it's a skill that really becomes apparent on the timer at the end of the dungeon. So that's working out really nicely for BDGG here. They have done a lot of work to figure out which person is going to play which spec in each dungeon. With the format that we have here, figuring that out is actually an extremely difficult thing to do. And I've seen the spreadsheets that they've used. It is an impressive feat to be able to coordinate 5 different players who can each play so many different specs into coherent compositions for each map that won't cause them to double up, given the series rosters that we have here. It is an incredible feat of coordination to be able to do that, and I think it's paying off really nicely for BDGG here. It looks like this is just a beautiful combination of specs and players for their team.
I'm just impressed somebody managed to impress you with a spreadsheet, to be honest. But this is a big pull here. This is a big line of sight pull here. And again, for the tanks here, you have to be really careful of this sledgehammer debuff that gets put on you. It's a stacking armor decreasing debuff that goes on you. It can absolutely wreck the tank, and you can see Cry just dropping really low there from some of the hits as well. They throw out the grenades on the ground, which on this terrain as well is absolutely awful to see. Death Knight utility coming in really handy there with the piston head blaster there with the grip on the other side of Sanguine. They handled that really well. That was a triple pull, line of sighted around, killed it outside so they didn't have Guini in the encounter space. That was nice. That was really nice, Stratos.
Yeah, they're going to be able to pick up some more of those robots now, and they'll be moving to the corner here. This little corner area is extremely potent. We can see both teams are actually in this area for fighting this boss. And when you're in this area, Trixie doesn't actually have line of sight to the locations that she would jumpstart over to. And so because of that, she just doesn't go anywhere, and you can just keep fighting her here. Nano is going to spend a little bit of time out on his motorcycle before he comes and joins the party, but once he does, you can just keep both of these enemies here the whole time. The downside of this is you're not going to have an exhaust cloud to go and stand in for the big, I forget what it's called, the big tase, the mega tase, as it was. Yeah. But you do have a lot of immunities on this team, which means that whoever gets targeted has a good chance of being able to immune it here. You can see it's going to go on Thalamir here. He's just going to have to fire off the AMS and hope for the best, I guess. And yeah, that's going to be fine. That immunity works out nicely for him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only, and it's not an issue, the only thing in this spot is that you just have to tank your Eye of Corruption because you have nowhere to move. But, you know, they got through that without any issues whatsoever. And it was obviously with Guini, you had no options to really pull trash into that area as it's too small to do so. So they've cleaned up Trixie and Nano, like, really well. They're heading over to Gunka now. And now it's going to be interesting to see how large they go in Gunka's room, how many toxic monstrosities they feel like pulling at once, you know, and if you can get your toxic monstrosities synced up, it's not too bad. You've also got access to some of the fences around the top area, which can actually avoid you getting sucked into the toxic monstrosities. But the big issue will be if they pull 2 or 3 and then they're out of sync, players will be getting ping-ponged everywhere. And that debuff can be quite nasty. You can use an immunity on it, but you can also heal it off as well. But yeah, this is a dangerous area. The little slimes are also dangerous. You've got the elemental. You've got to watch out for the slime wave. Here comes that consume now. So Thalamir can just AMS it and not have to really worry about that dot. But they're having no issues through this. The Hunt, Chow, and Thalamir are absolutely popping off on this pack.
Yeah, this is some classic Hunter and Death Knight damage when there's just this many targets. Great work by the team here. One mob did get healed there, that Slime Elemental from Sanguine, but it's to be expected at this point. This is still a great outcome for them. They were able to do this very, very quickly. And that revival from Terrasant against the Consumes there just allowed them to stand in as a whole team and not worry about it at all. That is huge Mistweaver utility against that nasty, nasty disease that will absolutely kill. If there are 2 people that get affected by it and you don't have a dispel for the second person, that second person is as good as dead on a key of this level.
Absolutely. Here's what Thalamir was holding his AMS for, so he stayed in for this one just to try and destroy this quickly as they'll start moving around. I wonder how they're going to manage, if they're going to bother pulling they'll absolutely bother pulling it for percent, but whether they'll pull the trash in on Sanguine with Gunka. Obviously, you have to manage that really well. They will have a Ring of Peace to knock the trash away if they decide to do that, or if they'll just play this safe.
I don't think they came here to avoid pulling. You know what? As I said that, I was expecting them to run right into the boss, but yeah, it looks like they are going to play this one safe. Nope, they're running into the boss. All right,
take it back.
They waited until I made a claim before refuting it. That's a very good strategy coming out from BDGG. And yeah, they're going right under the boss here. Because of the way this boss's hitbox works, as long as Trell is carefully positioning, Sanguine shouldn't be too much of an issue. The challenge there is that Sanguine might not heal the boss, but you will have Sanguine in the path of that melee squirt bot that you need to stand in at different points during the fight. So that is something that you do have to watch out for. However, they've been able to position in such a way that it's not going to be too much of a problem for them this time. So that's working out nicely. This boss actually does quite a bit of damage, as we do have more trash now getting pulled in the middle of this boss fight. 2 Mechagon Troopers, I'm not even sure where those ones came from, plus a Toxic Lurker and the Renormalizer. Okay, so this is the pull right at the gates near the start of this zone. They skipped it earlier. They entered the zone through a slightly different strategy than just walking through the doors. And now they were able to pull that trash in the middle of the boss fight. This is a really efficient way to make sure that you're always cleaving something down with the boss fight. And that's going to be something that will just get them such a huge amount of enemy forces. They're now at 80% of the way done with trash. Once they finish with this boss, they just need to get 20% more there, of which a huge amount is going to come from awakened enemies on the last boss, and then they're done. They just have to do that last boss. So they're pretty much done with this dungeon. Meanwhile, on the side of the boys working on Gunker, I don't know what their enemy forces situation is looking like, but I suspect that they are either on pace or behind. I don't imagine they could be ahead where BDGG is on trash count.
I think BDGG, as you said, like it's in a speed setting, it's amazing to see what you consistently can pull into bosses, so you're not losing time just fighting trash mobs on their own. And we saw two individual pulls into Gunker there, which, you know, as you said, it gives them a huge advantage, and it's absolutely crazy. So they're pulling all this into one pull as well. They're just going to have to be mindful of the cavalry here. When it does its rapid fire, it can do a bunch of damage. Also, just watching out on the renormalizers, making sure they kick those shrinks. Here comes the cavalry now and the rapid fire. So just making sure they're scooting around the back of this. That's champagne tanking from Trell there to not allow that sanguine to drop on the cavalry mob. God, be my hero, Trell. Be my hero.
Great job as well by the rest of the team putting priority damage into that cavalry, which has more health than the other enemies and came in later than them. But Thalamir on the Unholy DK, Unholy DKs are known for their big AoE, but actually while they are doing that massive AoE, whatever they're primary targeting is also taking just a huge amount of extra damage. And so he did a great job there of holding his burst and targeting that cavalry once it came in and using his burst then. That really sped up the pull for them. There are ways that he could have maybe done more overall damage by just going on his burst immediately as soon as the pull started, but that would have caused the pull to take longer because the cavalry would have taken longer to die, and that was what was delaying the next pull from happening. Samrak is going to be the awakened mob that they fight. I think that's the only one that they have pulled this dungeon, so I think we're going to see three with the last boss.
They'll be going in with three, which is wise because, as I mentioned before, if you've got fears going off while this is going as well, you know, you've got your focus kicks on Voidweaver, you've got Trell that'll most likely be pet taunting Urgroth, Chow that'll be taunting Urgroth to take those splats. You've got the Dark Fury to watch out on the ground as well. You've got the Blood of the Corruptor putting its purple patches under that, and then you've got the boss firing off under it as well. But these guys are just absolutely blitzing through these at the moment. Voidweaver's almost dead. Urgroth's almost down as well. This is just really impressive. They are playing so clean.
They are in such a tight corner here, but they're able to escape it just barely. Wow, that was a scary part of the map to be in. They're now going to be going over to do the intermission phase. A little misstep there as they walk the wrong way at first, but they're able to do a U-turn, get up the side of the stairs here. They actually have a lot of people that can just turtle and run through here or use those sorts of effects, although AMS is not up for Thalamir, so going to have to do some jumping. Luckily, they are playing those Night Elves, which have a beautiful jump animation, so that's going to work out well for them as they get through the intermission phase here. Everybody is doing that hack. This is a great job by them of getting to that hack really quickly. Grievous is actually so nasty on this part as well.
They did that clean. They've all gone down so they can finish it up the top. There's, 10% left on there, I think, for the channel to finish up. And then they'll just be moving into one phase, this HK8 here. So they've done this so well. I'm still in awe of the fact that all three obelisks basically died at the same time with the tank buster. And they should have no problems one-phasing this at all. Cooldown save for it, and they are absolutely mincing through this HK8 aerial. BDGG looks like they're going to take this and close it out at 2-0.
Yeah. There it is. It's a 2-0 for BDGG. That was another incredibly clean dungeon by these guys.